The sudden advance by ISIS across Syria and Iraq is forcing officials around the world to rethink their views of the Middle East. One prominent American who's taken a second look is Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. He is with us now from Capitol Hill. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us how you have changed your views.
Well, I think the interesting thing is that as world events change, obviously you change your analysis. So 5 years ago, ISIS wasn't a threat. But I did say even as much as 2 or 3 years ago that it was a threat to give arms to them in Syria. So I think had the president had his way, or had Hillary Clinton had her way, we may well have had ISIS in charge in Damascus now, because they've been arming and creating a safe haven for them. As it is, I think ISIS is more of a threat to us now because of the arming of the Islamic rebels in Syria.
Have you changed your views on aid to Israel?
Excuse me?
Have you changed your views on aid to Israel?
I've always said that foreign aid, we shouldn't give foreign aid to anyone if we don't have it. Basically, I've always thought it was a bad idea to borrow money from China to send it to any country. But I've also always said that as we begin to pare down, and as I am for reducing foreign aid and ultimately eliminating it, why don't we start with the countries that are burning our flag? So I would start with our enemies and the enemies of Israel. But I've also taken the same position that Netanyahu has taken about foreign aid, that even Israel someday should be independent of it.
Senator, the front page of the Washington Post has a piece about what they call your evolving views on some foreign policy issues, and pointing out that in June, when asked about airstrikes against ISIS, you said, "I'm not so sure where the clear-cut American interest is." Then now you're criticizing the president, saying he should have acted more decisively, and now you support U.S. airstrikes. So let me ask you, what is our clear-cut American interest there?
Well, what I would say is that I have always said that the president is required by the Constitution to come to Congress. So since the beginning of my public life, I've always said Congress declares war, not the president. The president used to agree with me. It's actually the president who's changed his position. Back when he ran for office, he said that no president should unilaterally go to war without the consent and the authority of Congress. I still maintain that view and always have maintained that view.
You know, back to Nora's question about the Washington Post, you were described as an isolationist, but those close to you say, no, he's really a realist. How do you see yourself?
You know what I think's funny about it is they're all saying, you've changed, you're no longer an isolationist, therefore you're on two sides of an issue. And all I've been saying for 5 years of public life is I'm not an isolationist. I look at every individual instance of whether or not we need to be involved. I look at it reluctantly. I don't want to be involved in war, but I do look and see when American interests are threatened. And I am like most Americans. I am influenced by the beheading of Americans, now the beheading of a British journalist. I think it's going to unite the world against ISIS. But I have steadfastly been against Hillary Clinton and President Obama's intervention in Libya as well in Syria, because I think they've helped to create the situation that we now face with ISIS.
Even though some argue that been an intervention in Syria might have prevented ISIS becoming what it is now.
They're absolutely wrong. For example, had we bombed Syria last year, had the president actually got what he wanted and what Hillary Clinton wanted, and to bomb the heck out of Assad, my guess is ISIS would now be in Damascus. ISIS are the strongest fighters there,
Senator, they were not talking about
other than Assad.
The issue was not bombing. The issue was whether they should support the Free Syrian forces in Syria.
The issue is both.
And if they had supported them, they would have been less likely for ISIS to get as strong as it got.
Actually, Charlie, the issue was both bombing Assad and arming the rebels. We've been doing both at the behest of Hillary Clinton and President Obama. And I would say one insightful piece of news from the last week is some of the moderate rebels, so-called moderate rebels, have now signed a ceasefire with ISIS. So really, their enemy is really Assad, and they don't really care what ISIS does. And so they are the weakest fighting force there. It's a mistake to arm them. Most of the arms we've given to the so-called moderate rebels have wound up in the hands of ISIS, because ISIS simply takes it from them or is given them, or we mistakenly actually give it to some of the radicals. So the intervention in Syria has created a safe haven for ISIS and has made our problem much more difficult.
Do you want to be defined within your party as a different kind of Republican? Because you have suggested to some Iowans that perhaps the party was obsessing on such issues as same-sex marriage, which you had a very strong moral view on, but should not be obsessed.
Yeah, I do want to be a different kind of Republican in the sense that I want to reach out to new people we haven't been reaching out to. I frankly think that we are the party of voting rights, we are the party of the Bill of Rights, we are the party of emancipation, that we really should be the party that's reaching out to the African-American public and saying, hey, give us another chance, take a look at us. Many of the libertarian issues of saying, you know what, your government should always allow you to have a trial, to have a lawyer, these are things that are very important if you've ever been any kind of minority, whether it's an ideological one or a racial one, that we need protections against an overzealous government. And I think some of these arguments actually will resonate once we take them to new communities.
How close are you, Senator, to announcing your plans to run? Hillary Clinton was in Iowa this weekend. Are you heading there too?
Yeah, I've been to Iowa a couple times, and I've been to New Hampshire a couple times. I am going to continue to travel this year to try to grow the party enough to help us win in 2014. I will continue to go to places others haven't gone. I've been to Howard, I've been to Simmons College, I've been to the Urban League, I've been to Berkeley, of all places.
So you've been around, you've been to a lot of places. How close are you to announcing that you want to run?
Next spring will probably, our decision is when we'll make our final decision.
All right, Senator
Thank you,
Rand
Senator.
Paul. Always good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.